Hello, folks. Welcome to Earworms. This is episode 4. So we're 4 episodes strong, and we are continuing to talk about, learn about, and appreciate early electronic music instruments. And tonight we'll be taking a look at the Trautonium. Now, I should introduce myself, by the way. I'm Dr. Lawrence W. Moore, the Wayfarer Project. If that's a mouthful, just call me Wayfarer or something like that. In any case, I do release my music under both the artist name as well as my own name, depending on where it's going. So, as I said before, we are going to be talking about the Trautonium, and I will be introducing my co-hosts in just a moment. I have studied electronic music as like the main passion in basically my work as a composer, and of course, synthesis, sound design, those areas that are a big part of electronic music are the things that I love the most in composition. But even in learning electronic music at university and college, the early instruments, usually get just a few lines or a paragraph and then boom, onto something else. So it's been a real awakening for me in learning about last week's Onde Martenot, the theremin the previous week, and now the Trautonium this week. When I began research on it at the beginning of the week, pretty soon I realized, yeah, that's right. It was invented in 1930 in Germany. Oh dear. That was an adolescence that was a dark period in world history. And this is not a show about politics or even world history, but we will definitely mention that, which we need to, because it's part of the growth of the Trautonium and some of the people involved. And we need to remember at the end of the day, it is a musical instrument, and all of our creations as human beings can be used for good things. They can be used for bad things. It depends on what we do with them and what our intentions are. The Trautonium itself is capable of so much beauty, and it's one of the early synthesizers and an amazing instrument. There is light at the end of the tunnel now in this era, this day and age. There are some shall we say, diplomats for the Trautonium out there that are performers, writers, and one that we will be focusing on later at the toward the end of the stream. Peter Pichler is a great composer as well as performer and virtuoso of the Trautonium, and I see light in the future of this instrument. So, in any case, we have some good chapters to cover after the sad ones. So anyway, without further ado, I am going to introduce my co-hosts. First of all, Mr. J. Goodwin, and hopefully this time I'll be able to hear him. We tested that before the show, but you never know. Once you start the show, the gremlins do arise. Hello there, sir. I do hear you.
I'm very interested. In, this is you're really hitting what synthesis becomes here, and there's so many converging technological things that are happening that cause this instrument to be made. This is going to be a really interesting episode.
Yes, and it was a bit of a challenge also because it was an instrument that, because of the time period it was developed in, there was it was not a great time period for an instrument to be developed and get like acclaim across the world because of the great divisions. And at the same time, afterwards, because of the time period it grew up in, a lot of people did not want to take a look at it. And so there is kind of like a dearth of knowledge about it, and much of what is known is written in German. And this is not a research project where I want to go back to the university and learn a language in order to study musicology or something like that. And so Fortunately, Peter Pichler did help out a lot with some information that was provided to me. Well, today I was able to get some. I think I reached out a little too late. I was just worried because this is a small stream. I'm nobody, and this is the preeminent Trautonium performer in the world today. But I did decide after a few drinks on Thursday night to reach out, and I did get a response, so it was wonderful. Anyway, we're leaving another co-host here in the lurch, so let's bring him up, Mr. Adam Gray.
Hello there. Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate it. You mentioned to me earlier today that it's like in the upper 90s in your studio, right?
Yeah, it's just cooling off a little bit now. It's about 4:30 local time, and it seems like the heat might be breaking. But yeah, we're a little sweaty here in the studio, but we're gonna soldier through this.
Yeah, the solar maximum is at maximum. So anyway, let us bring up the slides here. And, oh, that's right. I left the studio and came back, so I need to call them up again. Everything's going to be a little bit rough around the edges tonight. We are a cottage industry here. Well, we're not even an industry. We're just a cottage. All right, so here we go. The Trautonium. It was invented in 1930 because of research that was being done into making things sound better, especially in radio. And around the world at the time in the 1920s, radio was a new popular thing, and one could really understand why, because you could hear things kind of live without being there. And of course, if you imagine now and think back about like some of the TV shows and films that you may have seen, and think about radio and how it sounded then, it was a little bit rough, a little bit staticky, and it did not carry the frequency spectrum in its entirety. You would lose some high frequencies, or a lot of high frequencies, that made sound clearer and crystallize the sound. You also wouldn't get some low frequencies that, especially like in a symphony orchestra, which was still very popular ensemble at the time, and especially in Germany. The orchestras were just not being reproduced in the radio very well at all. And it had to do with a number of things: microphones, amplifiers, and all the burgeoning technology. But hard work was being done in trying to address these issues. And part of that technology was used in the Trautonium. Now, Jay, you were saying something before we started about that. So anything you want to add at this point before we move on to see the inventor?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time where you kind of have these convergence of different technologies, and they're all kind of at different levels of maturity, but we're combining them all to send out music and voice, and it very a lot of people notice that man, this doesn't sound anything like when I'm sitting in the concert hall. So how do we make music, or let's first address the technological issues as far as being able to reproduce music, but then knowing the technical limitations we have at the time, what can we do to modify the instruments we're using to fit the constraints of the technology we have. And the first thing they do is focus on measuring what are the differences, and they end up using some tools that date back to the early 1800s that were originally used to map tide tables, and turn those into a way to draw spectrographs of sound. It's the first time we've really done it. And once you're able to measure what something is supposed to sound like, now you can then measure what you're actually reproducing and notice the differences, and you have to and then be able to work within that. But so much of instruments, the history of instruments being built prior to that, it's all about live performance. This is really the first time that you're focusing on radio broadcast and the technical limitations of that.
Yes, and definitely one thing that was on the table was development of sound producing devices that would be designed for the radio. Now, they were taking a different approach than what Thaddeus Cahill did with the Telharmonium. At the very beginning of the 20th century, which, if you guys haven't checked it out yet, episode 1 of Earworms, the Telharmonium was part of that, which was essentially a huge building that was a synthesizer with rotating cogs to produce all the different harmonics that made up sound, and there was a keyboard controller that would play notes, and the appropriate cogs, depending on the sound you're trying to produce, would spin on these huge axles and or rotors, and produce the tone color. Now, for just a brief primer as we go on, tone color is basically the unique sound of an instrument or voice. Like if I go doo, I could change the shape of my mouth and my larynx and make doo sound like ee. And not to make it make people run away from my horrible voice there, but the first one sounds kind of round, ooh, smooth, and the reason would be is there's fewer higher frequencies in the sound, whereas when I shape my mouth just right, it can produce extra frequencies called harmonic overtones that basically color the sound. And so it's the same note, doo, ee, the same pitch, but the second one sounds brighter, more nasally, and all that stuff. That's what we're talking about with tone color. And for a clarinet to sound like a clarinet, a flute to sound like a flute, a trumpet to sound like a trumpet, you need to capture their harmonic overtones, these frequencies that are higher than the notes that they're playing, that add to the color of the sound. And by capturing these frequencies well, you get a better reproduction of the sound. So when Jay's talking about spectrographs, that's basically trying to visualize or capture and then visualize the frequency spectrum where you have all these frequencies, including these harmonic overtones that are part of the color of the sound. And by analyzing them, you could see how strong they are, how weak they are, how present they are in the overall sound, and see where they're lacking, and basically say, okay, we're losing some frequencies here, or we're gaining some here, because you would compare a spectrograph from what gets broadcast over the radio to a spectrograph of an instrument playing live. Of course, the microphone will also color the sound itself, so that presents some challenges, but in any case, that's a big foundation for what was the driving problem, behind the research being done that led to the Trautonium. And the institute is, I just abbreviate it as RVS. I believe it's Rundfunk Trautonium. Jay, do you know the word for the institute that
so Rundfunk is
radio,
it's essential. Well, it's actually broadcast, but at the time it's specifically radio. And I love the fact that the Germans have funk in radio, because why not? Even though they're not really known for making funk. We get Rundfunk for radio. And the words are essentially it's like an institute to understand the radio and the technology of that, right?
And make improvements,
right.
And a lot of it, maybe some communications, but a big part of it was really trying to make music sound better.
Yeah.
So this was not. Now it had someone involved in the whole program here that we're going to take a look at now. I believe this is there. Oh, that's right. I put in a slide called the Not Trautonium. Here on Earworms, we like to use a little bit of AI art. And most of it is to make the streams kind of unique and a little bit surreal, especially with the thumbnail graphics. But a lot of times I like to point out what happens when you tell AI, I'd like a picture of something, and just how
it looks like a picture of my desktop setup here.
just how intelligent AI is at this point.
It looks like it looks like like an IKEA dental office that you have to go ahead and assemble, and they've only gone through half of the instructions.
This is from that 9 Inch Nails video. I
Oh,
remember.
it could be, yeah.
Now, we will see some pictures of Trautonia as we go, because it did evolve a good deal over the years. And so you'll see some of the pictures for anyone that's new to the subject, and you can think back and see, all right, that didn't look anything like it. And I certainly didn't ask for an astronaut. I think that's what we got there, an astronaut on the left. I don't know. But in any case, the not Trautonium. And now the inventor of the Trautonium, Friedrich Trautvein. Now, he did some military work in World War I, and then was part of an institute that was part of the parties, shall we say, in World War II. And but at this point in time, when he invented the Trautonium, it was basically for the purposes of he was encouraged to make it, first of all, by Paul Hindemith, who was a great German composer who later left Germany before the war, and one of the premier 20th century composers. And he was encouraged to create an electronic instrument with some of the technology that was being worked on, and so he did, and that led to the Trautonium.
The RBS is kind of coming at the problem in both directions. They're measuring the limitations and loss of audio fidelity with the existing equipment that you have for radio, and then Trautvein is kind of coming from the other angle, going, okay, well, given the constraints, how can we reproduce music and the accurately within what we have now. So RBS is both working on improving microphones, improving amplifiers, improving speakers, and the broadcast system itself. And then in parallel, you're working with, well, we know what we have right now. How can we get better fidelity within those constraints? Because we know that there are limitations when we're trying to record actual acoustic instruments. We don't get in a proper field. So how can we narrow the bandwidth and still be able to convey the majority of the musical experience?
Right. As I was talking about earlier with my little silly voice demo, woo and in order to get those higher frequencies that color sound, capture them, and then broadcast them, it requires bandwidth. And bandwidth basically is how much width, frequency-wise, do you have when broadcasting in order to convey all this information of the frequency spectrum. And typically, the wider the bandwidth, the wider the range of frequencies you can convey. However, there was definitely a desire at the time to try and have more and more radio for different purposes, different stations, entrepreneurs wanting to get involved in radio, and this was around the world. And so, if you're going to have all these stations with different genres of music or different news reports, things like that, you need to limit the bandwidth in a way, but still try to carry the whole frequency spectrum. And that was part of the problems that they were working with. But part of the research led to, what could you make instrument-wise that would be used in broadcast and sound good? Because then you're basically getting around the problems of microphone technology, where you can produce sound signals that are designed to sound good on the radio, as opposed to just trying to make the sound of like a voice better. One of the problems they had at the time was like higher pitched vocals, especially sopranos. The sopranos did not sound as good being carried on the radio as they would. Well, nothing sounded as good as hearing it live, but there was especially issues with some of the higher frequency materials in kind of loss, or what you do get just isn't as pretty,
Right, and it's a similar thing, for any of us that grew up with landlines, well, and even with cell phones now, they very specifically limit the audio range to try and focus on just human voice frequencies when we're speaking, right? Very few of us talk in a soprano high C, or a bass, low C. And so the anything above and below that is just wasted bandwidth, and you are making your equipment unnecessarily complex. But if you know that you have to operate within that frequency range, well, then that's going to necessarily affect the way that you make music and send your signals across.
Yeah, I think one of the most terrible things about cell phones is the way that they're, I don't know, for lack of a better word, they're sort of EQ'd to the frequencies that are beefed up in it. As far as like equalization goes, is that it's all that awful mid-range stuff that projects the hardest,
Right?
And it just sounds utterly awful.
Yeah.
Well, our ears here in that range, our ears are more sensitive in that range. One of the research topics that came about at the time, I think it was in 1925, so it would have been right around this time where the RVS was working on this in Germany, was Harvey Fletcher and the Fletcher-Munson curve, where it was found that our ears don't hear in a linear way. Bass frequencies are basically need to be louder in order to sound even with upper mid-range frequencies. And then just at the top of the higher frequency range, it starts sloping off again where our ears are less sensitive. But basically the upper middle range is where our ears are more sensitive. And so that's already something that we're going to hear more clearly with the way our ears work with our brain in the psychoacoustics of it. And so, and then the cell phones emphasize that even more. And so,
if you've ever been trapped next to someone on a speakerphone, you know exactly what we're talking about.
And
it's
double
the most
so because
irritating range ever.
Yes, yeah, it's nails on a chalkboard. So, but that's another part of the what RBS is dealing with is so it's one thing to say, well, I can reproduce the sound, but it's another thing is that we're also understanding the physical and psychoacoustic nature of how humans hear, and also applying that, right? So there really is this confluence of biology, of psychology, of electronics, and also physical, and then radio broadcast, right? It's all of these things are coming together at once, and we suddenly have this tremendous explosion of understanding of what sound is and how we perceive it, which really affects everything, up to today.
Well, folks, I just want to quickly just announce something because I hear the thunder outside the window. Before the live stream started, our power went out here and went out for about maybe 10 minutes or so, during which time I did get the generator ready. So we do have the generator power ready to go in case power goes down. So if I disappear from the screen, wait about 5 minutes. Hopefully I'll be back on once the generator's up and going.
All right,
Anyway, go ahead, Adam. You were about to say something.
In your absence. One of the topics that my wife Barbara and I are really fascinated with is the development of the transatlantic accent in early media, where you have sort of a similar situation where oh, hi kitty.
Cat's help streams. That's wonderful.
He's helping. You want to maximize the clarity of the information, or the dialogue or whatever is being broadcast over radio, not just for entertainment purposes, but for military usage and so on. So an actual accent was invented, a whole new way of speaking English with very particular emphasis and very clipped, sort of brisk pace to it. And it's kind of a similar thing.
Yeah, and if you notice, like if you watch the the Hindenburg crash, the way the guy that's on the radio, the humanity or whatever. If you actually listen to radio broadcasters, they all have that kind of near tenor voice. They you know, it's high up, because if I was on, you probably weren't going to hear it all that well on your speaker, because the speaker itself, you know, on your radio wouldn't be able to reproduce as low frequency as accurately, and probably wouldn't have the power as well. But if you're talking like this and you're very enunciating and this is what's going on, right, then it's much easier to hear on those you know, subpar speakers and
Very,
radios.
very punchy. It's easy enough for Americans and British English speakers to understand.
Yep.
No matter what, and you see that start to spill into entertainment and on stage and so on for years and years afterwards. But
Well,
yeah,
and I think it's still replicated now in certain ways. There's still hangovers of it, like when English people sing pop songs, when Germans decide that they're going to sing English pop songs, it all kind of has that generic, not British, not truly American, but it's a you know, a mixing of it. It's closer probably to American than it is anything else. But that's just, everybody picks it up. I mean, ABBA, you know, listen to ABBA, and it doesn't sound, you know, it sounds like American singing. Right. It just kind of became this universalized way that you sang.
Yeah. Actually, there was 2 points that were raised in the chat, but I wasn't able to get even halfway through that, partially because of the vision problem I have. I read slow. So, Psyche, my wife, Liza, could you please bring up Roberto's most recent post, and then Barbara Lawrence's most recent chat? I think they're both quite relevant, and well, I think I can too. How about
Well, I can. Are you talking about, you know, so there's Roberto's.
Yeah.
Transmissions not only have to take into account the miles and transmitter ability, but also take into account the average receiver and speaker capabilities of the audience, right? And then also you have to worry about other stations that are broadcasting near you in band, because if they're too close, then you start to get heterodyning, and then they cancel each other out, or you get, you know, odd interference.
Right. And then, yeah, I think
That's your wife, Adam. You read it.
I'll read it if you leave it up.
I'm trying to.
How
Yeah, there
you're
we
doing
go.
that, the sorcery, Jay. Barbara Lawrence in the chat says, I have a niece that used to shout every time she spoke. They thought she was going deaf, but it turned out that her hearing was so acute that she heard everything and thought she had to yell to be heard. Wow, I can't even imagine. My ears are super sensitive. If I was yelling all the time, the noise in my own head would make me insane. I just wouldn't talk.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It happens to me sometimes when I record the videos and so forth, where if I'm monitoring things too loud in my headphones, I'll be speaking too loud. So I gotta just keep reminding myself, even though I'm like playing some music as I'm talking about things in my videos, I need to turn it down, or else without even knowing it, I'll be just clipping when I normally wouldn't be.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of alleys we could go down as far as like the acoustics of the human skull, because in my head I sound like Jay Goodwin.
Yeah.
But on the microphone I don't sound anything like him. You know, it's so deep in my head. But yeah, that's some of the hardest parts about learning how to sing or perform with your voice.
Yeah. So we made it to slide 2, just past the not Trautonium to the Inventor. And
long.
Oh, I just hid myself. Might as well. I don't look all that great. And I a lot of times have to look in, and you guys are avatars, so we might as well be avatars together. So anyway, let me go on to the next slide. Now, this was just to help people visualize things a bit. I know it isn't big, but of the pictures or the photos of the early Trautonium, we're talking about 1930 to 1933. There's another edition of the Trautonium, edition as in EDITION, that comes out in 1933. But the early ones would have looked like this, and none of the photos have it displayed very big at all, unfortunately.
Well, it's because I don't think I'm not sure that there's any of these still surviving. There might be one, but There weren't many of these made, and they didn't.
Yeah,
There
and
were
the black and white photos apparently were scanned in low resolution. Well, part of the thing is, when you're converting photos into, a digital image, especially if it was done in the early 90s, early 2000s, you're wanting to save on file size, so it'll transmit better, and so a lot of them are low resolution photos, and I guess nobody's converting them in higher resolution these days. But in any case, we do see the top piece is basically what you would have in front of you, and it would be positioned where almost playing like an onde martineau, where the strip that you see going horizontally across the front is basically a wire at the top being suspended, and it's a wire that could be pushed down, or, well, you do want to push it down, toward a metal, it could be a bar or basically a metal strip of some kind underneath, and basically the proximity you do here as an execution of pitch, and the left-right position of your hand in pushing that portion of the string down would basically control frequency, and this did have some amplitude control. And I believe it was right from the beginning, because a number of innovations with the Trautonium came over time, and it's kind of tough. You really have to do a lot of research and then memorization of what happened over time, the different innovations. But I think it was early on that it actually had a little bit of amplitude control, where the closer you get to the bar, you did hear an increase in amplitude. But there was a separate volume pedal as well to control overall volume. So that proximity wasn't enough to make full control, but it wasn't like the onde martineau, where the amount that you're pressing, whether it was the keyboard or the ribbon controller version, had no effect. In this case, it did have an effect. And the oscillators that inside at first were it's called a relaxation oscillator, and the early ones were actually based on light technology.
Yeah, glow lamps.
Yeah, glow lamps. And so maybe not like glow sticks, but
No.
but glow lamps. Fascinating how, the ideas behind it. We are going to get to hearing the Trautonium in just a moment, and then we could talk more about it, because the video will allow us to hear and see.
The technology behind this is it's impressive, and it really is how most analog synths work even now that are just using VCOs.
In fact, what I am doing is I'm going to get the first video kind of queued up. Basically, we are making an advance here on Earworms, where we're now going to be showing some videos and hearing them as well. But it takes a little bit for me to queue each one up, because for some reason the video in StreamYard, through uploading the video files through StreamYard, does not let me play and pause. It lets me just play it. But so
you're telling me we're going to do both sound and moving pictures?
Yeah.
What sorcery is that?
My God, what kind of alien Roswell technology are we talking about here?
What a time to be alive.
Oh.
Yeah, but the thing is, it takes a little bit for me to set it up. All right, so before I play that, what we're about to hear is the 1930, just a little clip of the 1930 performance of the Trautonium, which was its first performance after being invented, and it was a concert called the New Music Berlin Concert. And this picture here we see on the back left, in the dark suit, is Friedrich Trautvein, and back center is Paul Hindemith. And this time, he was very into electronic music and new technologies in creating a new sound, kind of like a new art, a new sound. He encouraged Trautvein to make this, make an instrument. And then we have in the middle front, sitting at the Trautonium, is Oskar Sala, who was involved in the process of the invention. And over time, during the 30s, he did start studying physics. He was a piano player, a concert pianist, as well as an organist, because a lot of times if you play keyboard, you may do both. Yep. You'll find more work that way. But he became like the first serious Trautonium player, and he was involved in the invention process. And later on, he became basically the sole developer for the Trautonium, because Friedrich Trautvein kind of went on to do other things, other instruments, as well as a lot of war technology and different things. And we can kind of mention that a little bit later. But so Oskar Sala basically took over the care of the Trautonium and developed the next types of Trautonium that we'll be talking about. So anyway, let's hear Oskar Sala play the Trautonium and this music would be, what do you call it? A piece by Paul Hindemith. Hindemith wrote a number of pieces, but we're just going to hear one example. I have to be careful because YouTube does have bots that will kind of sense if something that's released on an album that has an SR copyright is being played. So I'm just trying to play for time here because it takes a while to get this done right. All right, there we go. So we should be seeing now the video, and we should be hearing it now as well.
Ich möchte Ihnen nunmehr das Trautonium vorführen.
The piano is off screen, and so is... Now, I'm going to try to back this up and leave a still image on screen. Let's see. Something like that. Oh. Let me see if I can get back there. There we go. All right. So what we see before us, it's kind of half on screen, but the wire and metal bar combination for playing the Trautonium, you could kind of see a little bit of the hand there as it was moving, at least in the lower register.
Looks like it has fixed keys. Is that
those were visual guides.
Okay.
Right. As time goes on, there are some things like little levers I've seen on the Trautonium, like especially the Mixtur Trautonium, which we'll get to later, that I've seen players actually push the levers and were able to play and trigger some things that way. But I think in the earliest model, it was just really the
just
string
indicators.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the box, of course, you see there. You saw him change some switches and dials. It's really your first, well, maybe not the first, but there's got to be something else. But it was one of the first synthesizers where it inspired, the innovations inspired a lot of synthesizer design that took place afterward.
And it really is the first synthesizer that is intended to try to accurately reproduce acoustic instruments, not just one, but many, and it's fairly easy to adjust it.
That was the first thing that struck me is how string-like it actually does sound.
Yes, and then there's another one right around this time period where it sounds like a piccolo, and then clarinet, and it has a tremendous range of different sounds, and it's because it's built around trying to mimic the performance that you can make with your voice.
Right. Yeah, and that even goes back to the middle of the 19th century with Hermann von Helmholtz,
Yeah, Helmholtz
and
his
who
resonance
studied
tubes.
that, especially biologically speaking, and how resonance worked in the human throat, larynx, head. But yeah, that part of the purpose was to study what are the spectral properties of these sounds, like ooh, ah, eh, and like e, and how they sounded different, and why they sounded different, and that led to basically making oscillators that could produce such sounds. The early Trautonium was technically a sawtooth generator, and that's what the light, what are they called, glow lamps.
Mm-hmm.
The glow lamps inside were sawtooth waves, so it was filtering that was the process by which some of the frequency spectrum would be removed or attenuated or shaped in such a way that you get different sounds. So it was a subtractive synthesizer, basically,
Right.
from the start. So anyway, I'm going to be calling up another video, and as you guys know, it takes a little while. So
Yeah, and so the interesting thing is Helmholtz is was doing all of these studies about acoustic waves in tubes, and it's very much how he saw the human vocal tract and all that. And you think, oh well, that's going to be musical instruments or whatever. Helmholtz tubes are also the way that automobile companies tune the lengths of runners for intake manifolds and exhaust manifolds because of the pressure waves that go through there. So I mean, it's still
Wow.
the same stuff that he was studying in the 1800s. We still use now.
Huh.
yeah, and all that time I was successful in just clicking a lot of wrong things. But I am going to
Well,
go here
I mean,
to our slides.
If you eliminate all of the wrong things, then whatever's left.
Yeah.
It need to be the
eventually.
right things.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So anyway, and we're looks like we went back a couple slides, and here we go.
Ooh.
This
is the
Volkstrautonium.
1933, and the company responsible for this is a company you may have heard of called Telefunken,
Mm-hmm.
and still around today, and they make some mighty fine microphones. In 1933, they engaged in this project to take the technology of the Trautonium and try to make it into a musical instrument that would be commercially viable for the house. And in fact, it was called Hausmusik. Not to be confused with
Yes.
house music.
Chicago then later picked that up. And
Yeah, I got the. Actually, before we do this, we are going to still. I forgot I had a second video about the early Trautonium just before this point, but we're going to cue those videos back to back here. Basically, I want to play some sounds that could also be played by the Trautonium that a lot of people may not think that the early one could do, but it could do it. Okay. Man, playing DJ in StreamYard is not easy when you have to use the external browser, I tell you. All right, so we're going to share the screen, and hopefully I get the right tab. 002. But it's better than just trying to imagine it. Okay, so here is the clip that I forgot to play. This is an early Trautonium. Oskar Sala is playing it. It's not really a video, it's still images, but you can hear some sounds of some of the shall we say, less. It
Instrumental.
depends on what less instrumental sounds. I was going to say less musical, but then again, I compose music that's that uses a lot of noise in it as well. But anyway, here we go. Okay, so there we go. It was capable of doing those things as well because obviously there's multiple components in it, almost like a modular synthesizer. And interestingly enough, I do have a link down in the description of Miles Jackson's presentation to the American Academy at Berlin. And in that presentation, he does have a recording, which I do not have, of Oskar Sala presenting the Trautonium to Goebbels because I guess he just wanted to continue work on it. And the party at the time did shut down the RVS, at least this, shall we say, more music-oriented, institute in favor of other programs. And, Oskar Sala wanted to basically keep doing what he's doing, so he had to present the instrument, and some of what he did in the demonstration from the audio I heard included sounds like that, kind of like saying, you know what, I bet you're the kind of guy that would like this sort of sort of shit,
So
and at one point,
I understand you like to make movies. Would you like something that can make sound effects?
Yeah, well, definitely, and even after the war, the soundtracks and Foley, as well as
that was the first thing that popped into my head. Hearing that was like, wow, you could Foley a whole radio drama.
It was actually in the
don't. I want to surprise him.
Oh, okay.
I want to surprise him.
Sorry,
so anyway,
very the lead there.
Bum, bum, bum.
So anyway, but in this recording, I heard of him introducing it to Goebbels. He also had a point where he was playing something that sounded like boom, 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 boom. The typical sound, like a evil sound of soldiers marching.
Yeah, it seemed oddly appropriate for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. But Goebbels was more interested in the more instrumental like sounds it could produce, I guess, or at least pretended, and being able to do performances and concerts for the stuff. They did.
If you need a theme for a villain, that's your baby right there. Amazing.
Yeah. So
you have Herr Goebbels. You have your villain.
Mm-hmm.
So I am calling up, I believe. Oh, that's right. I have to go back to StreamYard.
The thing that kept coming up as I was like looking at how they were how they researched it and then how they made the instruments initially and kind of the goals they were going for. It was like this sure looks a lot like wavetable synthesis, right? Just their mentality of starting with, okay, this is the spectrum, but we need to modify it for this. If we take these two and mix, we get that. And it's like, yeah, you're basically doing wavetable synthesis.
Okay, well, thank you, Jay. I got the next video up on screen, and let's enlarge it a little bit. So now, the Volkstrautonium, which was 1933, released by Telefunken, intended to be a commercial release. And here's a video that is related to that whole, demo of it. What you hear in the background is Oskar Sala playing a piece by Paganini.
Yeah. Sounds like a piccolo, but it's the Trautonium.
Wow.
And it sounds really good.
Yes.
And there you see basically a picture of a family. And this picture, I think, was used in the early promotion of the instrument, released by Telefunken for, playing at home, because families that could afford pianos, had them. It was common in households. Obviously not everybody.
Yeah,
but
we talked a lot about when radio became a viable entertainment product, and how everyone is looking for ways to optimize the quality of it. But what a lot of people today probably don't think about very often is that live music was it. That was all. That was the only way you could hear music prior to recording technology. And even in the 30s and 40s, live music would have been everywhere. Every bar would have a piano. Every sitting room would have an instrument, and people would just sit around listening to live music all the time. It seems kind of alien now, but that's how it was.
Yeah, we were far more musical, just as people, because you weren't sitting around watching TV, wasting most of the time, or listening to the radio. You learned instruments because if you wanted to, be involved in music, you're it, and so families, sang together and learned different instruments so that they could play together and all that. I mean, that was just a normal thing.
Yeah.
I was smart. While you guys were talking, I got the next two videos queued up, so it should be a little
We're
easier.
getting a rhythm here.
Yeah,
Getting it together.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's all the funk.
go ahead. Yeah, the funk, the round, or the Rundfunk.
The Rundfunk, the
people's
Telefunk.
funk.
Yeah. This is a broadcast after all. So the problem was it wasn't a success. Part of it was price. It was, I have no concept of how much the value of money was worth at that time, but from what I read, it was just priced a little too high. Especially, I think this is the beginnings of the new regime, as well as the recovery from the Weimar Republic and the inflation that was there. I mean, the German people had been going through a rough time, and it was about to get rougher.
and this is a part of recent history where we're also talking about how craftsmanship was still something that was automatic. So you're just looking at the cabinet. It's obviously made out of very nice wood. They're all handmade. So it's not going to be cheap, but you basically, you basically have a synthesizer. You have a whole orchestra at your fingertips with this, and the range of sounds is amazing.
Yeah, well, even it's a big difference from today, because I don't think the mentality was back then, let's see if we could save some money by cheapening up the design a little bit. It seems like nothing.
It looks. Looking at that right there,
yeah,
it's very apparent that the people building these viewed it as a musical instrument, being no different than a cello or a violin. It was very finely made. You can just see it in the details. And the quality of the materials. So this was not a disposable Casio keyboard. This is a musical instrument. Probably smelled really lovely and warm when it was running.
It was about 200 or 300. I've seen sources where it says about 200 were made, and some sources where it's like maybe 300. And then with the war following up, a lot were dismantled and the parts were used.
Sure.
And so, that's kind of what happened. Apparently they are findable, but you've got to really have some money. And there's one in a museum. There may be multiple museums that have them, but there's just not many. So as we go on, this is something I'm going to point out now, but I think this came later. I'm not sure if it was utilized in the next edition of the Trautonium that we're about to show, or if it was just in the Mixtur Trautonium. But I think actually, I think I've read that it was used in the Rundfunk Trautonium, which we're coming up to next. Basically, it was Oskar Sala that just continued, building and improving on the design. And at this point, after the failure of the Volkstrautonium, it was basically him working on his. And there may have been other makers doing similar things, but he's the most well-known, and he was the development behind it, because Trautvein was no longer on the scene in this project, at least. And basically, a major innovation was this oscillator here, the Thyratron RK1. Basically, also a relaxation oscillator. It was basically an improved core waveform that it produced. Still saw wave in nature for subtractive synthesis, but it was basically, when you add a tube to something and you make a tube oscillator, you're basically going to get, in my opinion, a lot more fullness to it. There's going to be a lot more body to the waveform that's created. And I say body just as a subjective term. I mean, I don't know what the proper term would be, but it would just sound, I think, and the waveform itself would reveal it, where it just, whatever's in it just makes it sound thicker.
I think the other thing is that at least the reasoning at the time that they go from the glow plug setup to the Thyratron is the glow plug was not a consistent waveform. They don't have the reliability, accuracy, and repeatability that a Thyratron does. And also that this reduces some of the complexity of setting up the oscillator circuit to begin with, because it includes some of what you would generally call logic that surrounded the glow plug, and it becomes a single device.
And they still exist today.
Yep.
And because I know, like, we'll be talking later about Pichler, who's the preeminent Trautonium of our time. He showed one in one of his interviews, and unfortunately, it was the interview that was in German, not English. The English one he didn't, but I recognized it when I saw it. I was like, okay, yeah, that's the. He described it as a Wunderthing. That's the only thing that I was able to understand that.
Yeah, so, I know that. So like many of the vacuum tubes that were still on the market. So the U.S. doesn't really make them anymore. The largest maker and exporter of vacuum tube was Ukraine prior to the invasion.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, now we're going to move on to the Rundfunk Trautonium. Now, the dates vary from one place to another, but they're usually just within a year of 1937. I think it's when you're building something and you're adding components and changing the components. Where do you draw the line as to this is done? And especially when it's something that's not being...
you're not selling it in quantities enough that it's, this is a series. There's a constant innovation on it.
Yeah, there's this model, but the thing that made this form of the Trautonium unique was it was designed for broadcast, and I believe if you can see there, it's probably small on some folks' screens, but if you see the hands there are two tiers of string controllers. So the left hand being on the lower one, and just like in more recent organs and so forth, the left hand will be on the lower stack, and that would be more focused towards the lower pitches, and the upper hand on the higher stack for higher frequency pitches. And so it was a polyphonic instrument now. You could play two at once. There was other things that could happen, and you could generate noise and other things. I saw that. So some of the effects and things could be triggered, and so you could hear even more than just two sounds at once. But as far as playing notes, it was basically a two-note instrument at this point. And what you see across the top there, the knobs and so forth, you actually see that in later models. I was trying to find out. I need to read more and find out more, like about the design of some of these components and everything. Even though a lot of it may be over my head, but yeah. Anyway, that was a Trautonium. This one was basically, it was mostly Oskar Sala now in making this. He may have had other engineers working with him, but he had basically taken over the project by this point. And you can see by the date there, 1937, we're getting close to that year. And so this is something that, since he was developing, that's why he wanted to demonstrate and try and keep at least some funding going for his instrument. Now, Jay, you were saying before the show, you mentioned some things that are historically relevant. It looks like when the NSDAP came to power, the National Socialists, we would hope that they did ban electronic music, and we would hope that they would have completely rejected a Trautonium for the sake of the instrument, but they did not, right?
Right. Yeah. They as part of much like we saw with the theremin after the Russian Revolution and the Bolsheviks take over, they have a new idea of what culture should be and what that everything should serve the party and the ideology and
this was happening in all mediums as well, not just
exactly right
music, but
right,
stage, photography, painting, everything.
Yep, all styles, right, all of that, right. So we saw that happen, with the Soviets, and we see a similar thing happen when the Nazis take over. Goebbels is essentially, I think, Reichsminister for Culture or something, and that includes music, art, plays, movies, the whole shooting match. But they have a very clear idea of what they want. They did not like expressionism.
No.
They were very much wanting to go back to a more grounded kind of musical style, and so the theremin was right out. Also, it was from the Soviet Union, so that was a double whammy on that. But this, he is demonstrated to Goebbels, and Goebbels is very impressed with it. And so the Rundfunk is the one that they used for broadcast. There is another Trautonium that they make for public.
Should I bring that up here?
Yeah, the concert.
The concert.
And that was actually played in the 36 Olympics.
I have 1940 listed here.
They actually did live performances at the 36 Olympics, and they also had them at the Nuremberg rallies.
And it was the Konzert Trautonium.
I'm pretty sure it was. It
because
may have been an earlier version, because they had to build like amplifiers and public and PA systems.
And here the thing was making more portable versions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they probably had something that was more portable. Now, since it was kind of like appreciated by the party, there was probably more made than what was happening when Oskar Sala was just doing it on his own. And then later, after the war, Oskar Sala was working on his own again. Probably during this time, there was more effort in it.
Yeah, they're definitely putting of the because again, most electronics is busy going to new and exciting ways to kill people. But this is the one thing that Goebbels very much kind of protected, because it was this unique thing, and he understood. As propaganda minister, he understood that the power of broadcast, and so that's why he really throws a lot of stuff into the Trautonium, because
it's also a lovely achievement for the party to take credit for. Look
Right.
look at what we've brought you.
Which is exactly why it shows up in the 36 Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Vladimir Lenin appreciated the theremin and
Right.
even took lessons on it after had his demonstration in 1922. So
Right. So
It
they
was
have you have the Neue Music of Germany, then in the same way that you had in the Soviet era, they have their own redefinition of what is art, how it's supposed to sound, and they embrace the things that make them unique and also show, look how advanced we are. Because the one thing that we don't really mention in this is that Germany and the U.S. are really the two innovators of radio and electronics in general, and they're kind of in this competition, for improvements. So this is a great bragging tool for the Germans.
yeah, like Bell Labs versus Siemens.
Mm-hmm.
So, so those were the next two versions. I'm sorry if the dates are a bit off. This is what, 1940 is what I got. I guess that would be like a finalized version. And I'm about to play something from 1941, if I can get my presenter stuff going here. This is actually a demonstration of the Trautonium in Holland. And all we have on it, and I watched a lecture that also mentioned it, is all we have on it was that it was 1941 and in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to enlarge this, and so we get to hear it again here. Now, this was definitely a Konzert Trautonium,
Right.
the more portable version.
Te Den Haag wordt door professor Oskar Sala een demonstratie gegeven op het Trautonium. Deze uitvinding van Trautvein is een melodisch instrument waarvoor de elektriciteit slechts de kracht levert tot het voortbrengen van de toon.
Now, you hear a piano in the background, and right now that's all you hear. This is just footage, we're about to actually see and
Yeah,
hear
they'll
things
get to the
happen at the same time. Yeah, the piano being played off to the side is, I forget the name, but it's someone playing an actual piano.
De bespeler regelt de stroom en de trillingen en kan deze
Perfect, maybe I
trillingen
should-
in oneindige schakeringen en klankkleuren vervormen. De uitvoering.
Here, let's skip that. It's after this gentleman speaks. All right, here we go. There's your Western harmonica.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see the.
Wow.
Okay.
For the 30s and 40s, this is basically witchcraft.
Yes.
There's a little man in that box
Yeah. Yeah.
and a piano.
Yeah. How many mechanical Turks do we gonna need for this episode? I don't know.
Yeah, let me just queue up the next video so it's ready to go for when it's time. Okay. All right, there we go. And so let me go. Man, I need
as well.
I need a
I
studio.
can't.
I need a studio of people to help me with this. All right, so anyway, we move on. And so next comes the Mixtur Trautonium. Sometimes I've seen this expressed as all one word, sometimes separate words, and sometimes they put an E, I guess as in trying to utilize the English word mixture because it was basically the same meaning. But so I just went with Mixtur, separate word from Trautonium. But it was definitely invented in finalized, shall we say? Well, not even then finalized. We'll say this was a Oskar Sala release of the
revealed.
Trautonium.
It was just revealed.
Yeah, and it was definitely implementing the Thyrotron oscillator by this point, although I think it was earlier that they had that in the Rundfunk.
Right.
But in any case, once again, 2 tiers of wire controllers, and now by this point it also implemented subharmonics, whereas before I mentioned about the harmonic frequencies that are above the pitch that you hear in a sound that kind of give it its color. There was also subharmonics as a theoretical thing, but they actually do exist, although mostly because of the physical properties of something that's producing a sound. But basically they slow down the frequency of anything that's being played, and you hear basically harmonic pitches that are basically whole numbers divided by the fundamental, and this was able to do that, as well as the just continued improvements on oscillators and adding additional ones.
Looking at that open side panel, and I'm just thinking, wow, that'll keep your feet warm.
Oh yes.
You don't even need a wood stove anymore if you got one of these bad boys.
Yeah.
A lot of radiant heat going on.
Now, we do have some videos that are coming up that demonstrate it. This first one that I'm about to play is the Mixtur Trautonium. And, this is just an improvisation because obviously here we don't want to have copyright strikes. And,
all the cool kids are doing it.
yeah.
You get used to it after a while.
Yeah.
It's been a few weeks since you've been captured there on B-side.
I know we're due.
Yeah, we haven't had our stream dumped in a while because I've slowly been getting further and further ahead, clearing movies weeks and weeks ahead. But we get flagged after every show for something, every single show.
So here we go. Now the footage is definitely later than 1952, but this is
a bit of wear on
Trautonium.
some of those.
Yeah. There you see the lever being utilized and the wire. Basically, it looks like a tape here, but basically the wire is on the underside and the top is, I'm not sure what material is being used these days, but or even back in 1952. But basically, it was something that made it nicer to touch than a wire. But you still had the wire underneath. As long as it's exposed underneath, it can come in contact with the metal bar below it. And then you also have these, I don't know what you would call them. They look like flippers. Yeah, I guess keys, yeah. But they're more like flippers or something. And they could also execute notes with a different articulation.
Ende 1920 entdeckte der Berliner Oskar Sala seine Liebe für ein neuartiges elektronisches Instrument, das Trautonium. Heute ist es ein Dinosaurier der Musikgeschichte. Dabei hätte es so etwas wie die Heimorgel der 30er Jahre werden können.
Right now I'm hearing kind of echoes of, what was it, Isao Tomita's stuff. My wife loves that. Have you guys ever seen something called Jack Harkheimer?
I don't
Star
think so.
Hustler.
Yeah, Star Hustler.
Yeah, the guy. He was at the Miami Transit Planetarium. Well, that music was actually a Japanese composer, Isao Tomita. Well, it wasn't his composition. He was doing some Debussy. I don't want to get into that, but I just heard, that it sounds like that.
It does, yeah.
Nur Oskar Sala kann den Saiten und Tasten die unvergleichlichen Klänge entlocken. Nur er versteht noch die Technik, all die Knöpfe, all die Schalter.
All right.
Yeah, it almost has like an arpeggiator sound to it, the way that it's being played, and then the you have so many harmonics going on.
Now, Oskar Sala at this point was basically working hard after the war to continue work on the Trautonium, to continue performing. And he was quite successful in using it for just about everything. In concerts of what we call classical music, Western art music, both from historical periods as well as more modern things. He used it in films. There was like a number of films in the new West Germany where the Trautonium was used in the soundtracks as well as some Foley. This is a Google Doodle. Just say Google approved. They commemorated him with a Google Doodle at one point that was at the 112th anniversary of, I think, his birth. And he was born in 1910, so that would have been 2022. This doodle was put out. And, of course, when you look at it, it's obvious whatever it's about.
Yeah.
The layman, such as myself.
Yes.
I'm thinking Trautonium.
So anyway, and there's the man himself. We might as well see some face. He passed in 2002.
There was a gap. So the post World War II, there's a bit of a pushback against the Trautonium and Sala and some of the others who had been, I mean, they weren't members, active members of the party, but because that was
because of their heritage.
Well, and because of the whole Neue music and the styles that the party had insisted on. It was no, we're not all that interested in it for a bit, and I know that's one of the reasons the Trautonium is pretty exclusively German. It doesn't really make it over to us,
Right.
but then by 52, they've kind of come around to saying, okay, yeah, this there's like everybody's rehabilitated, I guess.
Well, and also a lot of his funding came from the Marshall Plan and
right
in revitalizing the arts there. And Mixtur Trautonium was basically also, in addition to improving the instrument, was a way of saying, all right, we can't use what we had before necessarily, and so we're going to improve on it and make it better. And
Also, you've got culturally, you're seeing the rise of science fiction in the West. Well, everywhere really, but
and you're having a big economic explosion that's starting to fire up in West Germany, thanks to the Marshall Plan and the rebuilding and all of that, and so they're putting an emphasis back.
There's sort of a desire for spacey sounding space age stuff that came up.
Yeah, almost like moving on to a modern era.
The
and
modern
sounds
era.
and sounds that don't remind us of the past. Because another thing that was affected by this whole period was the fact that the music of like Mahler, Bruckner, and Wagner was utilized as well by the party, that it needed a bit of and it's certainly not their fault. It's certainly not the fault of the composers, and
right,
especially
it's just guilt by association.
Yeah, and even like Leonard Bernstein is famous for having conducted a number of, in addition to being a composer, he was also a conductor, and he conducted a number of Mahler symphonies in the 70s. And so as a Jewish American, Bernstein conducting the pieces was kind of like a way of saying, look, you can't just throw away this music and ignore it for how it was used. That's not the intention of the composer.
Like, we'll take your rocket engines, but we don't want any of that music.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is, that, so you do have a rehabilitation of like Wagner and all that. There are some artists that, despite being geniuses, don't get rehabilitated. Not necessarily musically, but like Lenny Riefenstahl, who really was a tremendous innovator in movie making. They just basically, she's dead to everybody because she was too closely associated with the regime and the propaganda.
The same thing, exactly the same pattern occurring in Japanese cinema post-war. A lot of people were just stripped, basically kicked out, and their films were burned because they had been, associated with or taken part in making propaganda and things like that. And a lot of people were blacklisted, but it passed after a few years.
Yeah, Riefenstahl, it never did.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of blacklisting before the war with the Japanese internment camps that we had here, just being related, just having Japanese heritage. People were taken from their homes.
Yeah, they're basically one core crew of filmmakers from the Toho Godzilla sort of school, and they all work very closely together on all those films. Eiji Tsuburaya, who did most of the special effects, and they had a separate filming director. He was in charge of filming those scenes with special effects. He had made a fake aviation reel with just model planes and things that the Allies were convinced was actually footage shot in the air.
Right.
And so there was a lot of weird implications and a lot of finger pointing during the occupation there, but luckily most of them did manage to get back to work.
Well, Oskar Sala also did soundtracks for films that were designed to they were about subject matter related to industry and basically development of industry in the chemical industry as well in West Germany, and a lot of the films were quite successful. Also, he did some cultural films that were culturally progressive, about homosexuality and so forth. And so it was a variety of things that he did that, helped the reputation of the Trautonium. Now, it's just an instrument in and of itself, but
again, it's by association,
But but furthermore, we have here Harold Gesmer, who was also a student of Hindemith, just like Oskar Sala was, if we remember back to that. Now, Hindemith had left before the war to Switzerland and then the U.S., so he's considered to be not just a German composer, but an American composer. And when he was in the U.S., he primarily focused on more traditional ensembles. Whether the music was traditional or not, it was still like orchestra, chamber music, and so forth. No longer the new avant-garde
music,
electronic instruments, or at least electronic instruments. But Gesmer was also a student, and he wrote for the Trautonium, so he was responsible on, shall we say, the art music side in helping the instrument to keep going, because most of his pieces were composed after the war. And in 1952, he began writing pieces for the Mixtur Trautonium, like a couple of sonatas for Trautonium, a caprice that's really beautiful. I can't play it because obviously I'll get a copyright flag on that, and so forth. Oh, we have a new face here in the chat. Tracy Harms. Anyone want to help me out with reading the chat?
Tomato was probably the foremost electronic musician introducing me to such things.
Oh, yes.
We were speaking about Tomita.
Tomita earlier. and I forget what the name of it was. That's why
Snowflakes are dancing.
Yeah, Snowflakes Are Dancing. Yes, Jack Harkheimer. I love that stuff. When I was growing up, I used to hear that, and I like just the old, pretty sound of it. But anyway, back to Harold Gessmer. So he helped in basically composing some of the legitimate art music for the instrument, and it helped further the instrument in that area. So I thought I would mention him as well. He made it to 2007. That was a good run.
Yeah.
And so we shall now say Coca-Cola to the rescue of the reputation of the Trautonium. Oh, boy. And let me see if I can
say that.
Yeah. So anyway, I am going to share this. There was an ad in 1950 from Coca-Cola that used the Trautonium in it, performed by our friend Oskar. So let me see if I can play this.
And it ended.
I think
Really?
that's your other clip.
Yeah, this is the Mixtur Trautonium.
Oh, yeah. I thought I could get away with not doing a lot of work a little bit. Yeah.
Think again.
Now, I'm going to also have to go to StreamYard and tell it.
No, you got to flush some of the old ones.
Like, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, the one thing is like even like during the late 30s and 40s, the Trautonium was used for special effects sounds in movies like fighter planes, the airplane engines and stuff like that, right? So yeah, when you were talking about using them as Foley, they very much
It's
are
perfect for it.
Yeah.
Really, the range of sound. It's just
Okay, so I think we could see this, and here we're going to hear it. It's actually kind of cute.
So trat der Gesangverein beim Wirt zum Goldenen Löwen ein.
Herr Wirt, die Kehle ist verdorrt. Wir wollen Coca-Cola haben, und zwar sofort.
Sensing a pattern here.
Like, am I ever going to get mine?
I'm going to pause it right there. Folks, I recommend that you don't drink that much soda. Actually, I haven't had a soda in a few years.
Now available on your side of the wall. Hey.
Yeah. Hey.
So there we go.
That's a nice little melody.
Yeah, it was, and it just goes on. But you also hear the Foley of the bottles and the opening of the bottles and everything that was done musically. So that was cool.
Yep.
And of course, we heard the Trautonium in the background being used. It's basically being used like a synthesizer in a lot of cases now. Just carry your keyboard over to the studio, but it was pretty big. So here we go.
There
Surprise!
it is, baby.
Surprise! I was surprised.
Yeah. And now to ruin.
Now the question is, Adam,
the timing.
As a movie fan, what do you think they use the Trautonium for?
This is not fair, but I'm just going to go ahead and say the sound of the birds.
Yes.
Ha ha ha!
But there was two sounds that the birds made. It was used for the sound of the birds' wings flapping, as well as the sound of them screeching.
Yeah, they're cawing.
And now when we hear them here, you're going to just hear how intense they are. They sound like birds plus. It's not quite natural birds. And I guess that's what Hitchcock was looking for. He wanted birds that sounded really evil, nasty. He wanted it beyond just, a hawk or something like that.
Yeah, they sound like possessed crows.
Die Vögel von Alfred Hitchcock. Ein Meisterwerk, das auch nach einem halben Jahrhundert das Publikum fasziniert. Mit verstörenden Bildern und nervenzerreißenden Geräuschattacken. Hitchcock wollte kein normales Vogelgeschrei, sondern wirklich unheimliche Klänge. Die fand er erst nach wochenlanger Suche in Berlin bei Oskar Sala. Der schuf den akustischen Terror auf...
Okay, since most of this is stuff we won't understand, I'll stop right there. But yeah, Sala was also the performer in that. He was basically the Trautonium at this point in time. There were, I heard of another performer, but not a lot. And my face is on screen again. Oh well, so
yeah, I love the bit about that Hitchcock, when he got, he was saying, the birds, but he wanted them very special, and they're like, we could just record some birds. And he's like, I could put a microphone outside my window and record seagulls, and it's not going to sound very impressive, right? And yeah, the Trautonium is just such an over the top. There's a they really sound evil. When they're being played.
It's aggressive.
Yeah, like including the wings flapping, like the that was done on the Trautonium as well as
Yep.
And so it was the combination of those two sounds. And in addition to that, there was other Foley in the film. Some of it maybe less striking or less commonly talked about, but he did other Foley sounds in the film as well. Some of the doors opening and things like that. So,
wow, that's what I'd use it for.
Instrument. Yeah, doors opening. Yeah, footsteps.
No, I mean it's all in one. You got your whole studio symphony right there, man. That's
some of the sounds they wanted to actually sound like the, a bit more realistic. So anyway, now we're going to look at a couple of modern. Well, this isn't completely modern, but close. Some other instruments that came out of the Trautonium, and then we'll look at some artists. We're saving the best for last. The Pichler, I think that's how it's pronounced, Trautonium. This is basically, it's got a controller that's similar, and then just uses modular synthesis to kind of give you a Trautonium-like instrument. But obviously, there's a certain, I guess, a uniqueness that you only get from using the specific oscillators like the Thyrotron, using the specific filters and so forth that are really in the Trautonium. This would be something that kind of models it. And so it's not going to be insanely accurate, but it does deserve a mention, I believe. And next we're going to look at this. There is a musician by the name of Max Brand who made something called a Moogtonium. And so Moogtonium. What am I doing?
Busted.
Yeah, Adam, you're rubbing off on me.
It's contagious.
Bad influence.
Yeah. And we are going to be taking a listen to this. Of course, it takes me a while. Okay, yeah. And then I did skip one video there. I am going to have to find another more organized way of doing this. But let's take a listen to this Moogtonium, which means I need to share it. And this is basically, you're just going to hear a bunch of people walking around and doing things kind of like it's a warm-up sort of thing. And that's kind of the stuff I need to use rather than actual performances, because then I'd get copyrighted. So I'll pause it right there just so we could kind of see here where now these are Moog components instead of the guts of a Trautonium, but it has built-in speakers.
Like a Konzert Trautonium.
Yeah. Now, I don't know in this Moog version, the keyboard is probably, I believe the keyboard would also work. So it's not just the...
not just the ribbon.
Yeah. or the keys in the Mixtur Trautonium that are kind of different
Flappers.
textures. Yeah, flappers.
Because those keys are non-conductive on the mixture. Nice score.
Get the UFO.
Yeah, it sounds like Space Invaders.
Space Invaders are coming in. They're getting lower.
Now, there we go. So, actually, some of those sounds that I'm hearing there are definitely Moog sounds. You can just hear it. It sounds like filters and... So anyway, I'm going to pause that because the more I hear it, the less like a Trautonium it sounds. But it does
Trautonium
deserve-
adjacent.
Yeah, it does deserve a mention. And now, just to compare it, there was a video I accidentally skipped, so we're going to come back to it. It's Mixtur Trautonium again, and I included this one because just the sound possibilities. So you heard, the one before that is not truly a Trautonium. Now, when you use the actual Trautonium sounds, that's the comparison we're going to make now. I have to, say all sorts of weird stuff just to kill time. So I'm trying to call up these things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the, Moogs and things like that, they're using solid state electronics but the Trautoniums, I mean, they had a hand wound transformer as part of the voicing for it, and so it was very analog the whole way through.
Elektronische Musik.
Vorrichtung zur Erzeugung elektrischer Schwingungen
The
und
narrator
deren
even got into
weitgehende
it.
Variationsmöglichkeit in Verbindung mit Spielmanualen, automatischen Regelschaltungen, Klangwandlern, Verstärkern, Schallstrahlern und mit Tonbandgeräten variabler Geschwindigkeiten.
And I'm going to pause here just to mention that I believe what we're talking about here is the new music. And in fact, we use that in English and in the U.S., the new music, and basically exploring areas that, at least at that time, had not been explored before. And electronics gave you that ability because in music, you always come back to it, like in other fields of arts as well. It's like, is this truly new? It's hard to find anything that hasn't been done before. Well, since electronics and their capabilities were being developed, that was basically a new medium. And
Right.
So there was going to at least be some newness in what you're creating.
Mm-hmm.
And tape, oh, wow, I love tape. I think that's why I do what I do these days. It's because when I was a kid, I used to love that Radio Shack tape recorder I had. And
Oh
you
yeah,
know, pressing record and play at the same time
yeah,
to record, and then pressing the rewind or fast forward button while you're recording. And,
yeah. Speed it up, slow it down, and
Yeah, I figured out how to make my own tape loops when I was around 13 or 14 by taking apart a audio cassette and actually splicing it together in a loop and reassembling it.
yep.
and on these reel-to-reels, you could literally just take the tape and hold both ends in your left and right hands and just run it through and go back and forth and play it real time.
Or flip them and make a Mobius strip and.
So that's kind of like the vision that it was, you know, coming out of in post-war time, that was
Herr Goebbels
definitely
would not be pleased.
No,
no,
Yes,
no, no,
I
no, no.
don't think so.
Yeah. So we will go back to these slides here. Starting to get used to it. All right. LudoWic. This is a modern day electronic musician. Doesn't just play Trautonium, but Trautonium is one of the instruments he does play. And he's also a writer, a composer. And interesting thing is when I hear his music, I can always recognize that it's him. So he definitely has a unique musical fingerprint. And I'm going to be playing Trautonium. I guess you could say it's a bit of a demonstration, but he's playing something that is a piece of music, or it just certainly sounds like something that he wrote also as a piece of music. So hopefully we won't have any trouble playing this. I'll try to keep it from being a problem by pausing periodically. Here we go. LudoWic. Definitely check out the artists I'm about to present, like that Max brand. You can find that on YouTube. And LudoWic is easy to find on YouTube. Just spell it properly, LudoWic. And a lot of cool stuff there. Definitely check out these artists from their own pages. And, give them the plays and stuff. Although LudoWic, his subscriber count's pretty substantial, so he's pretty popular. I'm going to pause just a second. We'll play a little bit more, but I'm just making sure.
I see now. To me, this is what I'm enjoying about the instrument. The new music and the avant-garde stuff is not so much my wheelhouse, but I'm just amazed at how analog this how stringy and just warm and wonderful it sounds.
Oh yeah, and definitely check this artist out. It's easy to find on YouTube because I don't think anyone spells their artist name that way. So. And it's some beautiful music. I was just letting it play, and it was like really cool. And a lot of things where there's some kind of, I would call it a sober kind of beauty with a little bit of nostalgia as well as maybe just some sort of sorrow to it. But
yeah, there's just a nobility in the tone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little short on words for it, but it's terrific.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Just hoping.
Yeah. So this is, and I think this, seeing this, more modernized version, and then the Moog adaptation that they were playing with or whatever. I think the Moog and this to some degree, because this is clearly using modern parts, the attraction to a lot of musicians is less about the synth itself, and it's more about the interface. So we're used to pianos where you might have velocity sensitivity and then maybe aftertouch, right? What this particular interface allows you to do is, so the harder you push down, right, you see it bowing and pressing down. That's what's actually dealing with the the volume, right? So you louder or softer depending. But because you're directly on that string and just rocking your finger back and forth, you're able to get vibrato in a way that you really can't do with a normal key bed.
Well, it's almost exactly what you would be doing on the neck of a violin,
right?
Yeah.
And because there's no, I want to move up, 30-second. Just good luck on a normal key bed, right? But because this thing is a continuous interface, right, for the string, you're able to really be able to phrase and have the slide in, slide out,
full control of
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like he says there, a few slide controllers work like this. I mean, definitely. Between the Inventor and the Trautonium, the whole, ribbon controller thing started. But this one had...
but the idea of the bar moving down, being able to increase, decrease.
Yeah, the amplitude response.
Right.
Yeah, it was a major difference in the
It's a
Trautonium.
very three-dimensional instrument. It's very interesting. You just have infinite finesse with this.
Yeah.
And then I try to go back to my slides, and every time it flips me out of them.
Hi, Ludo. How you doing?
I'm trying to use hotkeys all over the place.
Practice. We're getting there. We're getting there.
All right. Well, who knows? I'm on screen here. All right. So let's move to the next video. Well, actually, let's do the slide first. Now, this week, I actually, after I had a few drinks, I did actually get the courage to email Peter Pichler, who is the premier Trautonium performer of our time, and very knowledgeable. And I did see an interview where he spoke in English, so I was like, great, he'll at least understand me. And I was able to get in contact with his office, so to speak, and they were very kind. They said, use whatever clips you'd like to use, and they also gave me some of his social media links, which are in the description. There's a whole heading for Peter Pichler's social media and website. Definitely check him out. Like, there's an Instagram and Facebook there, as well as the YouTube channel. His YouTube channel only has 309 subscribers. I can't believe it. So definitely, folks, check that out. And there's been a couple nights this week when I was just listening to the music, before bed, and just all sorts of things. There are concert performances. If you want somebody to play some of the Hindemith pieces that were from the 30s, if you want someone to play Harold Gesmer's pieces on Trautonium, this is the guy you call. He could play the traditional repertoire of the Trautonium, even does demonstrations of how the bird sounds were executed for the birds. He's a walking demonstration of the history, but he also composes his own music today, and it's very cool music. It varies from one piece to another. Some of it can be kind of funny and lighthearted. Some of it definitely more serious. And I'm going to play now at least just an interview that is in German, but we're going to fast forward to points because he actually does play a Volkstrautonium in it, and then a what do you call that? The Mixtur Trautonium. But I am, as soon as I try to do something else comes up, and it's the wrong window. It's the wrong browser. I don't know why this has. Oh,
you wanted to run Linux.
It's not Linux.
It doesn't matter.
It's the browser.
StreamYard
You and your fancy computers.
Very Chrome's.
Well, first of all, I'm still somehow my StreamYard's view is not here anymore. Oh, there it is. Okay. Here we go.
Technology.
I got it there. No, that's LudoWic, right? Yeah, that is LudoWic.
That's the one we just saw.
Yep.
Yeah. And I had already loaded it in. I just called up the wrong one. Damn, I keep hitting the wrong key. A lot of it's me. That's it. It's me. It's my fault. I just can't.
It's
Okay,
fine.
jetzt
It's fine.
zeige ich
Don't-
euch erstmal das Trautonium, wie das grundsätzlich funktioniert. Also das Prinzip. So. Das ist eigentlich eine ganz einfache Angelegenheit. Erstmal. Und zwar, wir haben eine Seite und unter
So I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here, just to where he demonstrates it.
der Schiene. Und jetzt hören wir einen Ton und jetzt kann ich halt entlang gleiten nach oben und nach unten in die andere
So there's one of the Volkstrautoniums in the
Yeah,
world right
yeah.
there.
Richtung natürlich auch. Gell? Und ganz tief und natürlich auch ganz hoch. So, und das ist ja auch das Prinzip gewesen von dem Instrument, dass ich höher spielen kann als jedes Instrument und tiefer spielen kann als jedes.
So you could even just see from what you can do with that, the difference between that and if I can move the bar here. I'm going to move it over here to where he shows his mixture.
Yeah, that one's there's a few more adjustments available on it.
Dieses
Of course, you've got twice the,
Wunderding.
There he goes, Wunderding.
because that's essentially split in half. One side is for the upper, one side is for the lower. For the
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see he has a monitor there for working with video. Now, listen to this here.
Eine Schiene und eine Seite, sondern wir haben jetzt zwei Schienen. Ja? Also erstmal kann ich zweistimmig spielen, was sehr wichtig war. Dann hat er was erfunden und auch einige Patente hat er dann erfunden, der Oskar Sala. Und das ist dieses Wunderding.
This is Wunderding.
It is a wonder thing.
Yeah. So we're going to go to the...
Müssen Sie sich vorstellen, hier ist
Sorry, me being a bad DJ. Dance amongst yourselves. All right, here we go.
Dann sehen wir noch diese schwarzen Tasten, muss ich auch noch kurz was dazu sagen. Das sind Hilfstasten, dass ich mich ein bisschen orientieren kann. Dass ich sehe, okay, das ist ein C, das ist ein E, G, A, C. Aber ich spiele meistens unten drunter. Genau, aber zur Orientierung für klassische Musik. Sehr wichtig, weil das Trautonium war ein klassisches Instrument, muss man auch dazu sagen. Für klassische Musik mit Orchester, mit Klavier und so weiter.
So yeah, it's describing the fact that it is a classical instrument. We use with harpsichord and orchestra.
clavier.
So yeah, I think clavier is harpsichord sometimes.
Depending.
Yeah.
Bei der Musik von Schönberg, das ist ja manchmal, spürt man halt einfach nichts. Das ist ganz einfach erklärt.
Yeah. I'm just trying to. Here we go. There we go.
Das kann ich auch noch einstellen, dafür habe ich auch meine Pedale. Also ich spiele nicht nur mit den Fingern, also ich spiele auch mit den Füßen, wo ich dementsprechend eben eine Auswahl machen kann. Welche Komposition.
So have you learned German yet?
Well, he's got his foot controls, and he's going to have 2 for the top and 2 for the bottom, and then
Yeah.
his finger controls and dials, and that's all I've got.
Yeah. And I know he does play here at some point. I'm just trying to find the right spot. That, I remember that sound, I think was also used in the Birds.
Yeah, when they're like talking to each other up on the wires.
I like that.
So he recorded that first part. Now there's...
Genau.
There we go. So,
Nicely done.
yeah, not easy.
No.
Not easy. And I'm going to call up one last video here. Thank goodness it's the last time I have to DJ like this tonight. But we are about to hear a performance. Yeah, I'm on screen again. Well, not. I mean, come on during the intros, but I don't need to be on screen when the top of my head is aimed at the webcam, and I'm just trying to find shit.
Well, your pores look great. I want to let you know.
What about my porn?
I said your porn. I have not watched your porn yet.
Oh, you haven't subscribed to his OnlyFans?
What did you say? No, what did you actually say?
I was just making a joke about your pores because your
pores. Okay.
Yeah. And that dandruff has really cleaned up a lot. I've noticed. It's been
the cream is helping.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I'm glad. In the studio, here we go. This should be it. Now, I have recommended to you earlier, Adam, some community theater on the 1927 film Metropolis. Well, this is recording. This is in Australia, and Peter went to Australia apparently and did this performance where he is actually doing some live.
Oh wow! For
some live music for Metropolis.
Wow!
And yeah, I'm wondering how they got the Trautonium from Germany to Australia. But as we'll hear in the beginning, it is Australia.
I'd like to thank you all for coming today at the Australian premiere of Peter Pichler's Trautonium performance of Fritz Lang's 1927 masterpiece, Metropolis.
How cool.
Of course, I should say at this point, anyone that hasn't seen the film, I do recommend it. It's free on YouTube to watch, and it is a silent film, though.
It's a silent film. It's fully in the public domain. But for those of you too young to remember, this is how music for films used to be done, live in the theater.
Yes.
Well, I'm too young to remember.
Why not
you? I think.
But I read about it. Okay. But this is a perfect application for this. I mean, what a great film to use this instrument for in the hands of a master player.
Yeah, that's how they were performed, though. It would have been piano in
It
that
depended on
case.
the
Well,
theater.
it depends. There was the time before they were able to include music, and then there was the time that they were able to. But once they were able to include sound, of course, you had dialogue.
Right, but in a silent theater, you would have had at minimum a piano or an organ.
Right.
A lot of the old theaters still have their pipe
Orchestra
organs.
pit.
Yeah, an orchestra pit for a big production where you'd have like a 12-piece or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll play a little bit more, and then we'll wrap things up. But I definitely encourage people to go to the description. Watch the film, and also
some of his music.
Subscribe to Peter Pichler's YouTube channel. There's plenty of great music there. It was kind of a surreal film too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's very
I mean, kind of.
very
Yeah.
expressionistic.
Yes,
and
yeah,
surreal.
German expressionism was in high form with that.
Yeah, Fritz Lang's good for that.
Yes.
It's wonderfully stylized. If you haven't seen it, just watch it. Put on your favorite album and just watch it.
Yeah, or play this.
Maybe Peter's
So,
your new favorite album. Yeah,
I mean the thing about like his intro to it or whatever, it was like a mix of Blade Runner and Tron.
yeah,
for the
very
intro.
Vangelis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I believe we've concluded with all of the video excerpts, but yeah, once again, folks, check it out. And we shall finally also explain.
Oh, boy.
I wanted to introduce this as a concluding subject for today. It's just like the eye-watering art that we use here at Earworms. I'm the one that's responsible for all this stuff. Poor Basil there. I don't know why he keeps showing up over and over again.
Smilex is into that stuff.
Yeah,
But-
Smilex is porn we're getting into now.
Oh no.
But anyway, this was a result of me asking Stable Diffusion to give me a medium-sized Trautonium, because at first, that first thing I got was too big.
Yeah.
And I was
Looking
going
for something more portable.
I was thinking, yeah, let's try something a little smaller than that. And then I said a small Trautonium, and I got a picture of like two tiny pieces of metal. And of course, I wanted something with a blue background because I find it easier to take out the background that way. So I said, a picture of a medium-sized Trautonium on a blue background, and this is what I got.
Yeah, it's success.
Yeah, and
I think I'd like to question the stability of your diffusion.
Unstable diffusion. Check your Earl.
Yeah.
Well, and then I thought something else that would line up with it would be a little bit of a trout, and I'm hitting all sorts of wrong keys, and so here is one trout. Doesn't look appetizing. And then
That trout's got issues.
3 Mile Island trout, yeah.
And then I got this one.
I mean, that's perfect.
AI is going to take our jobs, folks.
I mean,
Yes.
it does maximize the meat.
I can't wait till they can do surgery.
Yeah. What the heck?
So anyway, I included all that. So from week to week, you're going to continue to see some AI art because I think, it's high art.
Well,
And
it definitely looks like it's high, yeah.
It will help if it's high, yeah.
Yeah.
and it'll remind folks, what AI can do for us.
Jack shit.
So anyway,
Can't even get YouTube recommendations that make sense.
is there anything you gentlemen would like to say before we conclude? I think we probably did a pretty thorough job of talking about the Trautonium. There may in the future revisit some things about it here and there, depending on how the series over time unfolds. And so, but definitely there's it's an instrument with, it's changed so much over the years, so it's hard to say, exactly what it is, but I would say at the core it was, even from the start, Oskar Sala and now Peter Pichler, and there is a core to something called Trautonium, and there's definitely some spin-offs, but there is a core to it, and I think it's a ripe time period for anybody that's interested in tinkering and stuff like that to maybe work on it. Now, it's not easy, but there is information out there about how to build different components and at least incorporate some of its influences in your builds and so forth. Yeah. Anybody want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you for giving me the chance to come every week. I've learned something new about something I would have never investigated on my own. So it's always a pleasure, and I'm actually a little heartwarmed to see people keeping older technologies alive and thriving. I would love to see Metropolis with him playing. That would just be fantastic.
What comes next? Oh, yes, we have in the chat from Roberto. What comes next? Well, I'm still not exactly sure. Next week, I would like for the three of us to engage with an artist, but I need to find out if he is available. That would be lighter on the research, and he would have the freedom to play some of his music that would not be flagged for us, and we can talk about it and talk about some instruments.
I think that would be.
But if he's not available, I guess I could do the voter. I do want to do the voter at some point. The VODER.
I thought you'd become a politician for a moment. You wanted to
no
voters.
Yeah, no, actually, I don't do any voting anymore.
Oh no, the politicians do the voters all the time. I feel like I've been done by a politician recently.
Yeah, so the VODER, early 20th century instrument, came out of Bell Labs. Basically, the first speech synthesizer, as far as I know, and I'm definitely going to do it at some point. So if our artist is not able to make next week, then I'll do the voter. We'll just keep going from there.
I'm sure it would be worth waiting for if we can get someone live.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to be able to mix it up because especially once I started digging into the Trautonium, it was like, oh, my goodness. And then, since it's hard to find good, reliable information, like even that presentation, I had to worry about it, that Miles Jackson presentation, because by the end when people were asking questions about things and the theremin came up, he said that the theremin was invented 2 years before. And I'm like, nope. That's the patent date. And then he called good vibrations smooth vibrations, and it's like, you're a historian,
but if you will.
Well, but his research topic was the Trautonium, so I guess you can get some things wrong on the theremin. But I prefer to just not say anything if I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess probably if you look it up somewhere, it might say 29 because that was the U.S. patent date.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So, Adam, do you want to announce what's going to be coming up on B-Sides?
I would love to, and as soon as I figure it out, I will let you know.
Okay.
We never make plans that far in advance.
Oh, wow.
This Friday we had a nice little double feature. We had Night of the Living Dead and The Man Who Turned to Stone. Well, those are pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have the feature yet for Friday's show, but it's every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time on B-Roll Stage, and we've just started streaming live on Rumble the past couple of weeks, and it's going incredibly well. So,
I think I'm going to start that for this too.
Yeah, StreamYard will simultaneously broadcast to a bunch of different platforms.
Yeah, I know. I know that, but I wasn't sure because my Rumble channel is set to be mirrored to my YouTube, But it took forever for videos to start appearing, and then when they start appearing, they eventually stopped. So I'm thinking I might just, delete the few things that got there and then upload the first 3 episodes, or now 4 episodes of Earworms, and then just continuing to stream there, so that way.
Yeah, we're working on some more recorded videos in the background, so it's not going to be just live streams forever, but only so many hours in the day. But yes, we're up to episode 43 now on the live stream, which blows my mind.
Cool.
And of course, our good friend Jay Goodwin is there with us every week.
Yes, and every week when they watch these films, Jay, shares his knowledge on how to build them.
I'm sorry I lost the keys, Jay. I mean, get comfortable.
I've heard this one before.
All right, folks. So we want to thank our audience for joining us again. Some familiar names out there. And yes, every Sunday night we do this thing around 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. Right now we're in daylight savings, so that's when it happens here. And of course, you can watch after the fact. I leave them all up. And I think that's it. I'm out. I'm out of ideas. And you guys were expressing the fact that you're feeling a little bit tired, so I think we all should have a relaxing, peaceful Sunday night.
That would be a welcome change.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, take care and enjoy some Trautonium when you get a chance. Until next time, so long, and thanks for all the fish, especially the trout.